My mom and dad rolled their eyes when I walked into the courtroom, but the judge was surprised. I never thought a courtroom could feel this cold. The kind of cold that doesn't come from the air conditioning, it comes from eyes. From judgment. From disbelief. My parents were sitting in the second row when I walked in wearing the only gray suit I owned, one I'd bought secondhand for $40. My mom looked down at her purse. My dad rolled his eyes. That tiny gesture, it cut deeper than any word could. Because they didn't believe in me anymore. And maybe they had every reason not to. Everyone said I was crazy for representing myself. No lawyer, no backing, no experience, just me. The girl who left law school halfway through, working nights at a diner, suddenly standing against one of the biggest investment firms in the city. But this wasn't about pride. This was about Ethan. My brother didn't kill himself, no matter what they wrote in the reports. He was set up. The same company that destroyed hundreds of families framed him for the fraud they orchestrated. When he found out, he planned to expose them. 2 days later, he was gone. They said it was guilt. I said it was murder. So here I was, no degree, no firm, no faith from my own parents, just the truth. All rise, the bailiff announced. The judge walked in, gray hair, calm eyes, the kind that had seen the worst of humanity and still managed not to flinch. I expected him to look at me with pity or annoyance. Instead, when he read my name, something flickered in his expression. Ms. Carter, representing yourself? Yes, Your Honor. His brow lifted slightly. Very well. Let's see what you've got. My mom exhaled sharply, like she couldn't believe I was still going through with it. My dad didn't even look up. The defense attorney, Daniel Hayes, sat across from me. Perfect suit. Perfect smile. He looked at me the way people look at a child trying to play chess against a grandmaster. When the hearing started, I stumbled through my opening. My voice shook. I mispronounced legal terms. Hayes objected at least 5 times before lunch. But I kept going. Because every question I asked, every file I presented, every word I spoke, it wasn't for them. It was for Ethan. At recess, I sat on the courthouse steps with a half-eaten sandwich and trembling hands. The whispers around me were loud. She's wasting her time. She doesn't stand a chance. That's when a woman approached me, silver hair, sharp eyes, the kind of presence that doesn't need to announce itself. You're Ethan Carter's sister, aren't you? She asked. I nodded cautiously. Yes, ma'am. She glanced around before lowering her voice. Don't stop. I worked for them once. I know what they did. My heart skipped. You have proof. Maybe. She slipped a folded piece of paper into my hand. But you'll have to be braver than your brother to use it. Before I could respond, she walked away, no name, no number. Just that one haunting line echoing behind her, for your brother. I opened the paper. It was a bank record, offshore transfers, false accounts, and one name circled in red ink. Daniel Hayes. The same man sitting in that courtroom, smirking like he already owned the verdict. My breath caught. The edges of the paper trembled between my fingers. For the first time since Ethan died, I felt something close to power, fragile, flickering, but real. I looked back at the courthouse doors. Maybe my parents rolled their eyes when I walked in. Maybe the whole world thought I was a fool. But when this was over, they'd see me differently. And maybe, just maybe, the judge wouldn't be the only one surprised. That paper felt alive in my pocket. Like it had a heartbeat. Every time I moved, I could feel it pressing against my thigh, a quiet reminder that the truth wasn't gone. It was waiting. When I walked back into the courtroom after lunch, Daniel Hayes was leaning against his table, laughing with his team. His confidence was loud, too loud. It filled every inch of the room. But when his eyes met mine, he smirked like he already knew how my story would end. He didn't. The bailiff's voice broke through the chatter. All rise. The judge entered, his robe flowing like the weight of law itself. Court is now back in session. I stood slowly, my palms sweating, the paper burning against my side. Your Honor, I said, my voice shaking but steady enough to be heard, I'd like to submit new evidence. Hayes's smirk faltered. Objection, Your Honor. We were given no notice of any new submissions. I only received it during recess, I said quickly. but it directly connects to the case and to the company's offshore accounts. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing slightly. Is the evidence verified? Not yet, I admitted, but I can prove its relevance. The courtroom whispered. Reporters scribbled. My mom squeezed her purse tighter. My dad whispered something to her, probably the same thing he always said. She's going to embarrass herself. The judge motioned for the bailiff. Bring it to me. My hands trembled as I walked forward and placed the folded document on his bench. He unfolded it carefully, scanning the red-circled name. Then he looked up at Hayes. Mr. Hayes, your name appears here. For the first time, Daniel Hayes didn't smile. He blinked once, slow, deliberate, and shifted in his chair. That's a common name, Your Honor, he said smoothly. Could be anyone. The judge didn't respond. He simply looked back at me. Ms. Carter, this document warrants further review. The court will allow a recess while we verify its origin. You may file a motion for investigation. A recess. A small victory. My first. I could feel my chest tightening, not with fear this time, but with something close to hope. As people stood to leave, my parents stayed seated. My mom glanced at me, her lips pressed thin, her eyes softer now, but still uncertain. My dad avoided my gaze entirely. It didn't matter. Not yet. Outside, the courthouse steps were slick from rain. I sat with my back against the stone pillar, watching strangers pass. Some gave me looks of pity, others of quiet curiosity. I didn't care. I just needed a moment to breathe. Then a familiar voice said, "You found it." I looked up. The woman from before stood under a black umbrella, her gray hair damp from the drizzle. I started. Don't thank me yet, she interrupted. You're in deeper than you realize. Who are you? Someone who worked there. Someone who stayed quiet for too long. Her eyes darted toward the courthouse doors. Your brother didn't steal a dime, Emily. He discovered what the company was doing, and when he tried to go public, they made sure he couldn't. My throat tightened. You worked for Norwell Investments? For 20 years, she said softly. Until I stopped believing in what they called business. Why now? I asked. Why tell me this? She studied me for a long moment. Because you walked in there alone. You did what no one else dared. That judge, he's watching you. Don't back down. She reached into her coat and handed me a small USB drive. Everything you need is on this. Emails. Transactions. Names. But be careful, once you open it, you can't go back. Before I could ask anything else, she pressed the drive into my palm, gave a faint nod, and disappeared into the rain. I stared at it for a long time, the tiny metal glinting under the gray sky. My brother's voice echoed in my head, "Don't let them win." That night, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by old bills and empty coffee cups, the glow of my laptop lighting the darkness. I plugged in the drive. Folders opened. Thousands of emails. Payments. Hidden accounts. And one consistent signature, Daniel Hayes. By morning, I had everything I needed to blow the case wide open. When court reconvened, Hayes avoided my gaze. The judge looked more alert than ever. Ms. Carter, he said, have you reviewed your new evidence? Yes, Your Honor, I said, my voice firm this time. And I'd like to call a new witness. Hayes turned sharply. Who? I met his eyes. You. The courtroom gasped. My mother covered her mouth. The judge blinked. Mr. Hayes is under no obligation, he is, I said, because the truth he buried is about to surface, and I can prove it. For a long moment, silence hung heavy. Then, the judge leaned back. Mr. Hayes, please take the stand. And as he rose, slow, reluctant, I saw it. For the first time since this all began, Daniel Hayes looked afraid. The kind of fear that only comes when lies start to crack. When Daniel Hayes took the stand, the courtroom felt like it had stopped breathing. Every sound vanished, no whisper, no cough, not even the shuffle of paper. Just the faint hum of the ceiling lights and the pounding of my heart. He swore the oath, his hand barely steady. The same man who'd smirked at me since day one now avoided my eyes. I didn't blame him. He'd spent his career controlling the narrative. For the first time, he'd lost it. I stepped closer, my heels clicking against the marble floor, each sound louder than the last. "Mr. Hayes," I began, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut. "You were the lead counsel for Norwell Investments during my brother's investigation, correct?" He nodded once. "Yes. And you were responsible for overseeing the documents tied to the alleged embezzlement?" "That's right." "So tell the court," I said, holding up a file, "what happened to those documents after my brother's arrest?" His jaw tightened. "They were sealed. Standard federal procedure." I walked over to the evidence table, picking up a printed email from the files the woman had given me. "Then maybe you can help us understand this." The clerk passed it to the judge. The old man adjusted his glasses and frowned. "This email bears your signature, Mr. Hayes. It authorizes a transfer to an offshore account." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Hayes's lawyer stood quickly. "Objection. The authenticity of this document has not been verified." The judge looked at me. "Ms. Carter, the metadata confirms it came from Norwell's server," I said. "And the date matches the day before my brother's arrest." The judge nodded. "Overruled." Hayes's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're misinterpreting the data, Ms. Carter. There were hundreds of accounts." I stepped closer. "And yet only one of them was shut down right after my brother died. Can you explain that?" He hesitated. "Coincidence. Coincidence," I repeated softly. "Like how the man investigating those accounts suddenly ended up dead?" He shifted uncomfortably. "You have no proof of that." I held up another sheet. "This is an internal memo, timestamped the same morning my brother was fired. It's addressed to you. The subject line reads, 'Terminate liability.'" "That's what you called him, didn't you?" "A liability." The audience gasped. Hayes's face turned pale. "Your Honor," his lawyer shouted. "This is outrageous." The judge raised a hand. "Sit down, counselor. Let her finish." I looked at Hayes, my voice steady now. "Did you know my brother was innocent when you let him take the fall?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically. The silence was deafening. The judge's tone dropped. "Mr. Hayes, you're under oath." Hayes swallowed hard. I followed orders." "Whose orders?" I demanded. His eyes darted toward the back of the courtroom. I followed his gaze. A man in a dark suit sat there, still and watching, like a shadow no one else could see. Hayes's voice cracked. "That's enough." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Hayes, you are required to answer." Hayes's lawyer jumped up. "My client pleads the fifth." The tension in the room broke into chaos, cameras flashing, reporters whispering, the gallery buzzing like a storm had just hit. The judge's gavel slammed once. "Order." When silence returned, he turned to me. "Ms. Carter, we'll reconvene tomorrow. The court will review these documents in full." As the session adjourned, I caught my parents in the gallery. My mom's eyes were wet, her lips trembling. My dad, for once, wasn't looking away. He stood there, not proud yet, but no longer ashamed. Outside, the rain had stopped. I walked alone down the courthouse steps, my heels clicking against the wet stone. Every step echoed the same thought: this isn't over. That night, I went through the files again in my small apartment, the screen light flickering on my tired face. Hundreds of emails, transaction records, files marked confidential. And then, buried deep in one folder, I found it. An email from my brother, sent 2 days before his death. "If something happens to me, tell Daniel it wasn't worth it." I froze. My vision blurred as tears welled up. He knew. He'd tried to warn me. The truth wasn't just in the courtroom now, it was in my blood. Tomorrow, I'd walk back into that courtroom not as the girl no one believed in, but as the sister who refused to let her brother's story end in silence. By the next morning, the courthouse looked like a movie set. Cameras lined the steps, reporters called my name. Flashes burst like lightning in every direction. Headlines were everywhere. Young woman exposes corporate corruption. Whistleblower sister faces giants. Truth versus power. It should have felt like victory. But it didn't. Because I knew if the media had found me, then so had they. Inside, the courtroom buzzed like a live wire. The same reporters who'd once ignored me now sat in the front row. The same judge who once doubted me looked, alert, almost protective. And Daniel Hayes, he sat in silence, his hands clasped, the confidence completely gone from his face. The judge struck the gavel once. "This court is now in session." I stood, hands trembling slightly as I handed over a stack of printed emails. "Your Honor, these are communications between Mr. Hayes and Leonard Price, the CEO of Norwell Investments. They discuss the falsification of financial records and the silencing of employees who questioned the discrepancies." The judge scanned the pages, his brow furrowing. "Are these authentic?" "They were extracted from Norwell's internal server," I said. "Provided by a former employee." Hayes's lawyer shot up. "Objection. Anonymous evidence cannot be considered reliable." The judge looked at me. "Ms. Carter, can you confirm the source?" I hesitated. "Not yet, but I trust her." The word "her" made Hayes turn sharply, his eyes narrowing. "Your Honor, this is turning into a sideshow." I didn't flinch. "This sideshow is the truth you buried." The judge cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter, proceed carefully." I nodded and pulled out another document. This one shows a wire transfer approved by Mr. Price to an account in the Cayman Islands. The same account my brother tried to report before his death. Gasps rippled through the room. Reporters leaned forward. Hayes's lawyer looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Hayes stood suddenly, his voice breaking. "You think you know what you're doing, Emily? You have no idea what kind of men you're dealing with." My heart hammered. "You mean men like you?" He stared at me, the arrogance gone, replaced with fear. "You should have stayed quiet. Like your brother should have." The entire room fell silent. Even the judge looked shaken. Before I could respond, he realized what he'd just said. His lawyer tried to calm him, whispering furiously, but it was too late. The damage was done. The judge's voice was calm but stern. "Mr. Hayes, you will remain silent unless spoken to. Ms. Carter, please continue." I swallowed hard. "Your Honor, I request a subpoena for Norwell's internal correspondence and Mr. Price's personal financial records." The judge studied me, then nodded. "Granted." A wave of shock rippled through the crowd. When court adjourned, I stepped outside into the wind, the air sharp against my skin. My parents stood waiting at the bottom of the steps. My mom's eyes were red, but her voice was soft. "You were incredible in there." I almost didn't recognize her tone. There was belief in it. Real belief. My dad looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then, finally, he said, "You shouldn't have to do this alone." My throat tightened. "I've been alone since Ethan died." He didn't argue. He just nodded quietly, painfully, and walked beside me down the stairs. That night, I sat in my apartment with the blinds drawn, scrolling through the files from the flash drive. Every new document made my stomach twist: bank records, false audits, confidential memos. And then I saw her name, the woman who'd given me the drive. Clara Rains. Her employee record. She had worked at Norwell for over 2 decades. I smiled through tears. "You brave woman." The next morning, I went to court early. I wanted to see her, to thank her before she testified. But when I walked in, her seat in the gallery was empty. The judge entered holding a small note. He looked older somehow, more somber. "Ms. Carter," he said gently, "your witness, Clara Rains, was found early this morning. Her car was discovered near the bridge. The police are calling it an accident." My vision blurred. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The walls felt like they were closing in. The judge lowered his voice. "I'm sorry." I sank into my seat, the world spinning. She'd risked everything to help me, and now she was gone. The drive, the emails, the names, they had all come from her. And now, so had the warning: once you open it, you can't go back. My mother reached for my hand. "Emily, what does this mean?" I stared straight ahead, my voice barely a whisper. "It means they're scared." She squeezed my hand tighter. "Then what are you going to do?" I looked toward the judge's bench, where the truth had begun to crack the surface. "I'm going to finish what she started." The city felt quieter the morning Clara died. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from peace, but from fear. They called it an accident. A single car crash on a bridge outside town. No witnesses, no skid marks, no trace of what really happened. But I knew. Clara didn't die by accident. She was silenced, the same way Ethan was. When I walked into the courthouse that day, the atmosphere was heavy. The press that once buzzed with excitement now whispered in uneasy tones. Even the judge seemed tense, his eyes dull with something that looked like guilt. He adjusted his glasses. "Ms. Carter, the court offers its condolences for your loss." I nodded faintly, my voice barely steady. "Thank you, Your Honor. But I intend to continue." He looked at me for a moment, almost like he wanted to tell me not to. But then he gave a small nod. "Proceed." The defense table was quieter than usual. Hayes didn't smirk. He didn't even lift his head. The man who'd once looked untouchable now sat in silence, his face pale, his eyes hollow. I took a deep breath and faced the judge. "Your Honor, this evidence comes from the files Ms. Raines gave me before her death. It includes correspondence between Mr. Hayes, Mr. Price, and several executives from Norwell Investments." The judge leaned forward. "Have these files been authenticated?" "They have," I said. "By the Department of Justice." A murmur rippled across the courtroom. The prosecutor beside the judge looked up sharply. I turned toward Hayes. "These messages prove that the offshore accounts were deliberately hidden. They also show that my brother, Ethan Carter, discovered them and was targeted because of it." The judge gestured. "Proceed." I pressed a button on the laptop, projecting the emails on the courtroom screen. The first message appeared, a thread between Leonard Price and Daniel Hayes. "Handle the Carter situation quietly." "Understood. We can't afford another voice in the press. Make sure he doesn't talk." The room froze. The words glowed on the screen like fire. Hayes's lawyer leapt up. "Objection. These could be fabricated. Sit down, counselor," the judge snapped. "The court will verify their authenticity." My hands trembled as I clicked to the next image, an email from Hayes, sent 2 days before Ethan's death. "It's done." That was it. 2 words. But they hit harder than any confession. Gasps spread through the room. My mom buried her face in her hands. My dad sat rigid, jaw clenched tight. I looked at Hayes. You knew they were going to kill him." He didn't respond. His eyes flickered with shame, maybe fear. "Say it," I demanded, my voice cracking. "Say his name." He looked up slowly. "Ethan Carter." The sound of it, hearing his name in that room, hit me like a wave. For a second, my knees nearly gave out. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Hayes, do you admit to being aware of a planned cover-up?" Hayes's lawyer whispered urgently, "Don't answer." But Hayes didn't listen. "I didn't plan his death," he said, his voice shaking. "But I knew what Price intended to do. And I did nothing to stop it." The judge's gavel slammed once. "Order." The gallery erupted, reporters whispering, people gasping, camera shutters clicking. Hayes looked at me again, eyes red. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "Your brother was a good man. I thought I could protect myself by keeping quiet. I was wrong." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "Not yet." "Then help me finish what he started." He nodded weakly. "I'll testify. I'll give them everything." The judge turned to the bailiff. "Mr. Hayes is now in federal custody pending full cooperation." As the bailiff led him away, the courtroom burst into chaos, reporters rushing out, people shouting questions, camera flashes painting the walls in white light. My mother grabbed my hand, whispering through tears, "You did it, Emily, you really did it." But I couldn't feel victory. Not yet. Because Leonard Price, the man who gave those orders, the man who stole Ethan's future, was still free. That night, I sat in my dark apartment, the files spread around me like pieces of a storm I couldn't stop. The city hummed outside, the rain tapping against the glass like a heartbeat. I picked up Ethan's old photo, him in his worn-out jacket, smiling like the world was still good. I pressed it against my chest and whispered, "I'm not done, Ethan. Not until he pays." Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You should have stayed quiet, Miss Carter." My blood ran cold. I ran to the window. Across the street, a car idled under a flickering streetlight. 2 silhouettes inside. Watching. Clara was gone. Ethan was gone. But I was still here. And if they wanted to silence me too, they were going to have to try a lot harder. After Hayes's confession, everything changed. My phone didn't stop ringing. Reporters wanted interviews, podcasts wanted exclusives, and strangers online called me the woman who fought the giants. But fame wasn't what I felt. What I felt was hunted. Headlines ran on every major network. Female whistleblower exposes corporate crime. Ethan Carter's sister demands justice. They made me look fearless, but they didn't see me double-checking every lock, jumping at every knock, sleeping with my phone clutched in my hand. It wasn't paranoia. It was survival. Because men like Leonard Price didn't just lose quietly. They erased threats. At 2 a.m., there was a soft knock on my door. My chest tightened. I froze. "Who is it?" I called out. "It's me." The voice was low, rough, familiar. "Daniel Hayes." I unlatched the chain, opening the door just enough. "You're supposed to be in custody." He looked exhausted, no suit, no smug smile. Just a man who'd been broken down to the truth. "They released me under protection." "But Emily, listen, Price isn't gone. He's planning something." I let him in, keeping distance between us. "What do you mean?" He rubbed his forehead, eyes darting toward the window. "He's burning everything. Records, files, witnesses. You were supposed to be next. But you're not dead yet, which means he's not finished." A chill crawled up my spine. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm done running," he said. "And because your brother didn't deserve what happened to him." He slid a folder across my kitchen table, worn, creased, but heavy with secrets. "This is what's left. The vault codes. The accounts. The proof Price thought he destroyed." I opened it, scanning the pages. My breath caught. Transaction records, bribe lists, politicians, auditors, names that could tear down half the city. I looked up. "This could end him." He nodded. "If you make it that far." The next morning, federal agents raided Norwell's headquarters. They froze the accounts, seized the remaining files, and issued an arrest warrant for Leonard Price. But by the time they arrived at his penthouse, it was empty. He'd vanished. They said he was probably overseas. I wasn't so sure. When the court reopened for the final phase of the trial, it was no longer about Ethan. It was about everything. The courtroom overflowed, journalists, attorneys, even law students watching from the aisles. As I took my seat, the judge's gaze found mine. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice steady, "your brother's name has been cleared. His record will be expunged. But I understand you wish to submit additional findings." "Yes, Your Honor," I said, placing the folder on the table. "This isn't just about my brother anymore. This is about an entire system built on silence." The prosecutor opened the folder, eyes widening as he skimmed the pages. "Good God," the judge leaned back. "This information will be handed directly to federal authorities. Mr. Hayes has confirmed these documents were authenticated before being turned over." My parents sat behind me. I could feel my mother's hand trembling on my shoulder, my father's quiet breath beside her. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. For the first time, they believed. After court, as I stepped out into the flashing storm of cameras, I whispered to them, "It's not over yet." That night, back in my apartment, the rain returned. The same unending drizzle that had followed this case from the start. I sat at my desk, typing up a written statement for the press, an open letter demanding full investigation into Norwell's political ties. I wasn't afraid anymore. The fear had burned out. Then my laptop pinged. A new message. No sender. No subject. Just one line. "You should have stopped when you had the chance." The apartment lights flickered. My heart stopped cold. I ran to the window. A black car sat across the street, engine idling. 2 figures inside. Watching. I grabbed the folder, the hard drive, my coat, and bolted down the stairs. The night air hit my face like ice. The car doors opened behind me. "Emily," a voice shouted. I turned. It was Hayes running from the shadows, his coat soaked through. "They found you." Before I could respond, headlights flared, another car speeding toward us. Hayes grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a concrete pillar as it screeched past. Tires screamed. The car crashed into a hydrant at the end of the street, steam hissing into the night. We froze, hearts pounding. He looked at me. "You have to end this in court. Once and for all." Price won't stop until he's exposed publicly. I nodded slowly. Then we make sure everyone's watching. The next morning, the courthouse was surrounded by federal agents. The case had turned from state to national. The trial was now live-streamed. The whole country was watching. As I walked inside, cameras followed. For once, I didn't lower my eyes. The fight that began with my brother's death was ending here, in the same courtroom where my parents once rolled their eyes. This time, when they saw me walk in, they stood. And when I looked toward the empty seat reserved for the defense, I knew Leonard Price wouldn't show. But he didn't have to. Because I had everything I needed to destroy him, without him ever stepping foot in that room. The rain had stopped, but the sky still carried the weight of everything that had happened. It was gray, tired, like it had seen too much. I hadn't slept. My hands shook as I walked through the courthouse doors for what I knew would be the last time. The echoes of my heels on the marble floor were the same as the first day I walked in, but everything else had changed. That day, I was just Ethan Carter's little sister, the girl with no lawyer, no degree, and no chance. Today, I was the woman who had made the truth impossible to bury. The judge entered. All rise. When he looked at me, there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before, not pity. Respect. He nodded slightly. Ms. Carter, before we proceed with sentencing, I've been informed that the Department of Justice has completed its review of your submissions. Would you like to hear the findings? I took a breath. Yes, Your Honor. He picked up a thick folder and spoke slowly. Based on the evidence you provided, the federal government has confirmed a decade-long corruption network tied to Norwell Investments. Multiple executives, including Leonard Price, are under investigation for fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit murder. A murmur spread through the room. My mother's breath hitched. My dad's hand found hers. The judge continued, and as of 8 a.m. this morning, an arrest warrant for Leonard Price was executed by Interpol. He was apprehended attempting to board a private flight in Lisbon. For a moment, the world stopped. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My eyes burned as tears welled up, not from shock, but from relief. From justice finally catching up to the people who thought they could escape it. The judge's voice softened. Your brother's name has been fully cleared, Ms. Carter. His record has been expunged. The court acknowledges Ethan Carter as a victim of corporate homicide. The sound of that, victim of corporate homicide, hit harder than any verdict could. The gavel struck once, loud and final. Reporters burst into motion, cameras flashing, questions flying, but their words faded into a distant hum. All I could see was Ethan's smile in my mind, that old photograph I kept beside my bed. The one where he looked proud and unafraid. As the courtroom emptied, I turned to my parents. My mother's eyes were red, but she was smiling. My dad's voice trembled as he said, "You did it, Emily. You made them see him." I shook my head softly. "No, Dad. I just made them listen." We stepped outside into the pale afternoon light. The storm had passed, leaving puddles that reflected the courthouse in perfect symmetry. The same building that once made me feel so small now looked different. It didn't tower over me anymore. My mom held my arm as we descended the steps. "When you walked in that first day," she said, "we thought you were chasing ghosts." I smiled faintly. Maybe I was. But I caught one. She laughed through tears. "You're your brother's sister, all right." For the first time, I laughed too. A real laugh. The kind that didn't come from victory, but from peace. That night, I went home and sat at my desk. The same desk where I'd cried, researched, and stared at Ethan's old messages until dawn. But now, it wasn't just grief sitting beside me. It was purpose. I opened my laptop and began to write, not a report this time, not evidence, not legal jargon. Just a story. About a girl who lost everything and stood up anyway. About a brother who believed in truth more than life itself. About what happens when silence meets courage. Because if I learned anything, it's that justice isn't clean. It's messy, painful, and slow. It doesn't always arrive when you want it to, but when it does, it changes everything. Somewhere in that quiet moment, I felt Ethan's presence. Not a vision. Not a ghost. Just warmth. Like he was still there. I whispered into the empty room. "It's over now, Ethan. You can rest." A single tear slid down my cheek, landing on the keyboard. I let it stay there. The next morning, sunlight broke through the clouds for the first time in weeks. The city felt new, washed alive. I stood by my window, coffee in hand, watching the world move again. And for the first time since his death, I didn't feel like I was fighting shadows. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside. The courthouse bell rang behind me, slow, deep, final. Not an ending. A beginning. Because justice wasn't just for Ethan anymore. It was for every voice that had ever been silenced. And I intended to make sure they were heard.